I am Stephen Vizinczey, the author of Impresa for Older Women, An Innocent Millionaire, and my new novel, If Only. I would like to talk this time about a great Russian classic, which is also short. In fact, if you have never read a Russian classic, this is the book to start with. It's a penguin book called Pure Folk by Dostoyevsky. Imagine when Dostoyevsky wrote that book, there were only 20,000 educated people in Russia, which had a population of 160 million. But it also had a lot of small gentry who had a few serfs and a lot of priests. If you were bright and a peasant, your only way for a kind of education was going to the church, and then you were in a monastery where you spent your time reading. So Dostoevsky wrote his first book about a poor clerk. Very difficult to get it. He was a wage slave, and he earned his living by copying by hand documents. And the novel is correspondence between this poor clerk, whom nobody pays any attention to, and a poor girl who is young and intelligent and sensitive, and they are going to marry her to a horrible old man. And so these two unhappy people who found their happiness only talking to each other. And what is great about Dostoevsky and about this novel, that he was the best writer about pathos, because he could tell horrible stories in a way which makes you cry and never forget. I want to tell you a scene from this book. So this clerk is very poor and copies a document badly, and it goes to the head of the department. Say, who is this? Who is this terrible thing? Call the man here. And so this poor clerk is called in, and the chief tells him, that's wrong. How could you possibly copy this document wrongly? And he doesn't even look at the guy. He just, gives him a dressing down. And the man is so nervous and so desperate that he keeps turning his button and manages to tear down his button, and the button falls at the feet of the chief. And that's the first time he looks at him and see that he's dressed in rags, and clearly incredibly poor. So the chief says, well, cannot he get an advance on his salary? And the others, they say, I'm sorry, he already had all the advances on his salary he could get. Then he lets them all go and keeps only the clerk. It's so moving. I'm sorry, I still cry if I think of it. That you see this very tough man, and that is pathos, and this is what Dostoevsky great about. He gets tough, mean people suddenly become human, and unexpectedly even for themselves. So he when I am alone, he said, well, let me give you 100 rubles. He gives me 100 rubles, and he says, well, nothing terrible happened. You just will copy it again, and it will be all right. And then he goes, and the poor man, who was starving actually, he didn't have money to eat, because he spent all this money, goes home and writes a beautiful letter about it. It is a letter about toughness, which suddenly, surprising the character himself, he becomes human. And I read it once every year, and I promise you it will make you cry. Another great thing about this novel, that Dostoyevsky was totally unknown when he wrote this book and published. And the greatest, Vizinczey, who was the greatest Russian critic at the time, very powerful person, read the book and read it during the night, finished reading during the night, and he talked to a friend, another critic, and they decided that having read such a great book as Poor Folk, they have to go to Dostoyevsky and wake him up and tell him that he had wrote a great novel. Imagine that people who are trying to write today and were trying to get attention. There was once a world when critics would wake up during the night a writer because he wrote something which was very good. Well, that judgment was correct, because the book still lives, and you can get it in Penguin Classics. And in regard to Dostoevsky and about all the great Russian writers, I would recommend you read their short books. Their short books are actually better. I don't know whether you have the time to read, for instance, Tolstoy, War and Peace, but you could read Tolstoy short stories, which are also fantastic. So if you go to a great classic writer, the best thing is to start with their short books. Well, I talk to you again when I can.